John Travolta, Hollywood's evergreen icon. The explosive Tony Manero in Saturday Night Fever, the unforgettable Danny Zuko in Grease, and the dazzling comeback as Vincent Vega in Pulp Fiction, proof that a legend can indeed rise twice. His story begins in a tight little home in Englewood, New Jersey, where 6 kids squeezed into too few rooms and a father's grease-stained hands barely kept food on the table. Armed with only $150 and a stubborn dream, John Travolta carved his name into the beating heart of world cinema. He isn't just an actor, he's a force, a man who turned rhythm into flame, pain into performance, and became a cross-generational giant. Yet behind ovations and spotlights lives a spirit marked by wounds that never really close. Cancer stealing 5 beloved people, tempests of accusation, and controversies that never fully quieted. And now, at 71, the storm is heavier than ever. If John Travolta has ever reached you through a role, a smile, or an unbreakable will, consider this a tribute to the man who bled quietly and still chose to shine. It's harsh, almost cruel, when a legend's ascent begins not in triumph, but in a house too small for 6 restless kids and dreams too big for thin walls. That was the world that greeted John Joseph Travolta, born February 18, 1954. In Englewood, New Jersey, the youngest of 6, destined for the spotlight but raised in the grind of paycheck-to-paycheck life. His father, Salvatore Sam Travolta, a former semi-pro football player, spent punishing days in a small tire shop, the smell of rubber clinging like a second skin. His mother, Helen Cecilia Burke, once hopeful for radio and stage, funneled those ambitions into her children, teaching drama and English with chalk-marked hands, praying their futures might heal her forfeited dream. The Travolta home was more than loud. It was a daily battle to make ends meet. A half-empty fridge, pasta stretched to fill plates, bills piling up like storm clouds. Privacy didn't exist. John bunked with 2 brothers in a cramped room beneath a stained ceiling. Later, he'd say that chaos taught him how to stand out even amid the noise. That same suffocation became the furnace that forged his resolve. On the surface, the family looked like any blue-collar clan in Englewood. Behind the door, fatigue, overdue notices, and the ache of ambitions deferred. As the baby of the pack, John learned early that attention was currency, and you had to earn it. He danced in the living room to distract from worry, sang lines from his mother's lessons to spark a smile, and watched siblings rehearse. Understanding that every laugh he won was a small victory, by 16 the cracks had grown too wide to ignore. Crowded rooms, the stink of rubber, and a hunger for more, both a foundation and a burden. In November 1970, he stunned teachers and friends by dropping out, stepping off the only stable ground he knew to chase a dream no one else could see. He had saved $150, scrimped by skipping meals and walking instead of paying bus fare. On December 12th, he packed a battered suitcase, a worn actor's studio handbook, and little else besides fierce belief. He left his locker combo taped to a mirror for his brother, a quiet goodbye to the noise. Even now, at 70, he has said the echoes of that house never really left. They became both the beat of his resilience and the ghosts he carries. What does a dream cost when you're 16 and all you have is a fire that refuses to dim? For Travolta, it cost everything: safety, comfort, even the certainty of a bed. In late 1970, he turned his back on classrooms and the cautious hopes of his family to gamble on destiny. New York was unkind. For 8 long months, the city stripped him bare. Casting directors waved him off in seconds, some before he finished a line. Coins rattled in his pocket like cruel reminders. He stretched cheap hot dogs into dinners, drank from public fountains to quiet the hunger, and slept on borrowed couches or backstage corners warmed only by a radiator's hum. Too proud to call home. Too stubborn to quit. The solitude cut deeper than the hunger. There were days I thought I wouldn't make it, he'd confess later. But the dream, that was the only meal that kept me alive. Then fate arrived in disguise. August 1971, at a laundromat, he overheard 2 actors whisper about auditions for a touring production of Grease. He hadn't even seen it, but desperation sharpened his courage. He said he knew it, and walked into the audition with nothing but the need in his eyes. For 4 minutes, he sang and danced like survival depended on it, because it did. The director saw a spark too stubborn to smother and cast him as duty. For 11 months, he lived on buses and in cheap motels, traveling to 47 cities and doing 312 shows. At $185 a week, it was more money than he'd ever held. Under stage lights, he reclaimed himself. For the first time, he'd recall, I felt the world telling me I was right to believe, but that success was fragile. Touring meant survival, not arrival. In 1974, still reaching for something bigger, he stuffed hope into a beat-up Oldsmobile and drove west to California with $847 to his name. When the car died, he slept in parking lots, showered at a gym for $3 a day, and tried to look fresh at auditions he suspected he'd lose. Hollywood was merciless. His first job, an unconscious accident victim on Emergency? 47 seconds of screen time, $75 of pay. Then a one-liner on The Rookies. Crumbs, but he took them all. Each role was proof he was still in the fight. Then, a surprise call. A casting director needed someone fast for a sitcom pilot. Travolta dashed across town 23 minutes late and dressed all wrong. It should have been a disaster. But when cameras rolled, he transformed into Vinnie Barbarino, the smirking, street-smart Brooklyn teenager. September 9th, 1975, Welcome Back, Cotter premiered, and his life flipped overnight. Within 6 weeks, more than 10,000 fan letters poured in weekly. ABC hired 2 staffers just to read them. Up Your Nose with a Rubber Hose plastered itself across t-shirts and lunchboxes, selling $2 million of merchandise by Christmas. The kid who slept in hallways was suddenly a national obsession, but fame can be a cage. Directors saw only Barbarino, not the actor underneath. When he auditioned for Saturday Night Fever, the director warned, "I don't want Barbarino in my movie." Travolta understood. The role that crowned him could also bury him. He refused to be simple. He roamed Brooklyn, studied teens at Coney Island, copied their speech, stance, and swagger. Every rejection, every hungry night had taught him how to turn pain into craft. From frozen New York hallways to LA parking lots, from nameless extra to lunchbox face, his rise was no fairy tale. It was endurance turned into fire. And with that, he was about to set the world's dance floors blazing, unaware that bright lights cast the darkest shadows. What does glory feel like when it's mixed with sweat, doubt, and aching bones? In 1977, under Saturday Night Fever's white-hot lights, Travolta found out. He didn't just dance, he poured discipline into every step. 12-hour rehearsals left his legs shaking, white suit soaked through, body screaming. Some nights he collapsed between takes, too dizzy to stand. Yet, when the camera blinked, he delivered, not just rhythm, but truth. At 23, he earned an Oscar nomination. Not just recognition, vindication. The kid who starved in stairwells had carved his name into film with sheer will. Then, 1978. And Grease hit like a cultural thunderclap. Danny Zuko wasn't just a role. He became a phenomenon. Posters blanketed teenage walls. Jukeboxes echoed his voice. Theaters worldwide overflowed. The film surged past $300 million, sealing his global stardom. "I'd never seen anything like it," he said. "One night, I wasn't just an actor. I was part of people's lives." At 24, the world seemed his. But the price was steep. Endless press, sleepless flights, microphones in his face. Behind the smile, exhaustion gnawed. The crowns grew heavy. The very roles that gave him everything now fenced him in. Producers and critics kept seeing Barbarino. The scripts that piled up wore the same smirk. When he reached for depth, Hollywood balked. It was a blessing and a curse, he admitted. The world loved Barbarino, but they couldn't see beyond him. When he finally broke free, the fall was brutal. 1983's Staying Alive was meant as triumphant return. Critics shredded it. Moment by moment became a punchline. Travolta later remembered nights alone with headlines. The critics' laughter louder than applause. It seemed the dance floor that crowned him might also bury him. But resilience was in his bones. Near decade's end, Look Who's Talking, 1989, surprised the box office, reminding Hollywood he could still draw a crowd, even if critics sniffed. He survived. Triumph still lay ahead, then came resurrection. Quentin Tarantino, defying the studios, remembered the actor beneath the myth, charm, danger, soul. In 1994, Pulp Fiction detonated at Cannes. The audience stood for 6 straight minutes, clapping till hands ached, flashbulbs bursting like fireworks. Travolta stood there, tearful, reborn in the industry that had written him off. His second Oscar nomination wasn't nostalgia. It was proof. "That film saved me," he'd say. "It reminded me I still had something to give." The 1990s boomed. A silky mobster in Get Shorty, a split-soul duel in Face Off, political heft in primary colors. By decade's end, his name alone could command $20 million a film. But the climb never gets easier, only steeper. Endless days, months away from home, pressure to prop up studios. Even at the summit, the work hollowed him out. What happens when the hands that once applauded 6 minutes straight at Cannes begin to hesitate? The 1980s had already scarred him. Passes on roles that later crowned Richard Gere and Tom Hanks, American Gigolo, An Officer and a Gentleman's Splash, while Perfect, 1985, faltered. Whispers said he'd peaked. Pulp Fiction proved them wrong. But the roller coaster wasn't done. In 2000, Battlefield Earth, a passion project, became a lightning rod. Budget around $70 million, returns about $29 million. Late-night punchlines piled up. "I was laughed at more than I was listened to," he admitted. The $20 million paydays faded. Prestige scripts went elsewhere. Studios hesitated. Some films went straight to video. The financial hit hurt, but the spiritual one cut deeper. An industry's silence. There were bright sparks. Hairspray, 2007, showcased his range. The People vs. O.J. Simpson, 2016, earned praise for his measured Robert Shapiro. Hope flickered. Then, 2018 brought Gotti. About $6 million on $10 million and a wave of harsh reviews. Theaters half empty. It felt to many like Hollywood had moved on. Through it all, other shadows trailed him. His lifelong devotion to Scientology, which he credits with sustaining him through grief, drew scrutiny. Rumors circled. In 2012, lawsuits alleging misconduct were filed, then withdrawn or dismissed. A former pilot sought release from an NDA, claiming a personal connection. The matter drew headlines, ended without resolution. Tabloids speculated about his sexuality. He denied it, calling such rumors the Achilles heel of celebrity. Nothing was ever proven, but each headline left a mark. And still he kept showing up. Because for John Travolta, endurance is an act of defiance. His deepest blows, though, were never about box office. They were about love. In 1976, on The Boy in the Plastic Bubble, he met Diana Hyland, an acclaimed actress 18 years older, cast as his mother. Scripts led to laughter, late dinners, and flowers at her door. At 22, he'd never known love so steady. They spoke of marriage, houses, children. "She made me believe love could heal," he said. But behind her brightness, Diana was battling breast cancer. When he learned the truth, he never left. He read to her, sang to her, made her laugh through the pain. "Even if I only have a year," she whispered once, "it's enough because I've loved you." He wanted to marry at once. Fate was harsher. On March 27, 1977, she died in his arms at 41. He was 23. Days earlier, he had packed a white suit for their promised trip to Rio. He wore it instead to her memorial. Witnesses recall him silent on the flight, tears sliding, the world outside gone gray. "If she had lived, I would have married her," he said. "No one touched my soul like she did." Back home, the flowers he'd left for her still perfumed the room, wilting. Some nights he sat in darkness, speaking lines aloud as if she might still hear. When the cameras called, he returned. He poured heartbreak into Saturday Night Fever. Tony Manero's bravado was, in truth, John's grief. The Oscar nod was proof that pain can be shaped into art. Fate wasn't finished. Barely a year after losing Diana, the same cruel shadow returned. In 1978, while Grease conquered the world, over 300 million and a tidal wave of fandom, his mother Helen privately fought breast cancer. She told no one, not even John, so he could enjoy his moment unburdened. "She wanted me to shine while she was fading," he said. When he learned, it was late. For 8 months, he came home as often as fame allowed, reading to her, singing by her bedside, trading ovations for the fragile sound of her breathing. Clippings of his success lay beside her. On December 3, 1978, she passed, just 20 months after Diana. The same disease that stole his first great love now took the woman who planted the seed of his art. Within 6 months, his father remarried, the nurse who had cared for Helen. John remained outwardly respectful, but inside a new fracture formed. He kept smiling in public, but privately carried the weight that both women who formed him were gone, both to the same illness. For a while, though, it looked like life had finally turned toward mercy. He met Kelly Preston in 1987 on The Experts. The chemistry was instant but complicated. Years passed. Friendship deepened into something undeniable. New Year's Eve 1991, high in Gstaad, he dropped to one knee as fireworks cracked the sky and slid a 6-carat diamond onto her finger. She said yes through happy tears. Their Paris wedding felt cinematic, with a second ceremony in Florida to cement it at home. "I knew he was the man I'd grow old with," Kelly told a friend. In 1992, their first child arrived. Jet wasn't just a baby, he was a miracle. "You're my light," John whispered, cradling him. Parenthood transformed him. The man who once lived for applause now lived for bedtime stories and bubble baths. In 2000, Ella arrived, devoted, radiant, her dad's champion. Photos showed a perfect postcard family, premieres hand in hand, vacations in matching outfits. But the private moments mattered more. Pancake stacks toppling at breakfast, backyard sprints with bare feet, movie nights under blankets, Kelly's laughter ringing in the halls. Jet sketched airplanes, dreaming of flight. "The best role I've ever had," John said, "is husband and father." For nearly 2 decades, their home was a fortress of joy. When critics mocked or tabloids circled, he returned to Kelly's steady hand and his children's smiles. He dared to believe he'd finally outrun tragedy. But heaven, for John Travolta, never lasted long. From the start, Jet's health cast a shadow. Kawasaki disease as a toddler, seizures later. John and Kelly built their lives around shielding him, choosing privacy, filling his days with love. He adored planes like his dad, talked of flying someday. "He was my sunshine," John would say. January 2nd, 2009, in the Bahamas. The unimaginable. A scream, a rush, a bathroom, Jet on the floor. John dropped to his knees, performing CPR with desperate hands, tears falling as he begged his boy to come back. "Those were the longest minutes of my life." Paramedics arrived. It was too late. 16 years old. For John and Kelly, it wasn't simply loss. It was the unthinkable inversion, parents burying a child. Kelly cradled him. "I would give my life for yours." Ella, 9, clung to her father, wide-eyed. The house, once loud with music, fell silent. Then came the cruelty of strangers. An attempted $25 million extortion tied to Jet's death, forcing the family through a public legal ordeal. At the funeral, white flowers circled his photo. John stood with Kelly and Ella, hands locked, faces etched in grief. He wondered if he'd ever act again. For months he withdrew. And then, in 2010, a flicker of grace. Kelly, at 47, pregnant. In November, Benjamin arrived. "Our miracle baby," John said. It felt like a reason to live had been placed back in his arms. Laughter returned, flickering but real. The ache of Jet never left. But in Ben's heartbeat, the family found strength to keep walking. Then, cancer returned one final time. In 2018, Kelly was diagnosed with breast cancer. For John, the déjà vu was brutal. The same illness that took Diana, that took Helen, had come for his wife, the center of his world. Kelly battled quietly to protect the children from fear. John became her constant, caregiver, sentinel, soldier. Kelly fought a courageous fight with the love and support of so many, he told the world. Behind those words was a man unraveling, holding the center together the only way he knew. On July 12, 2020, at 57, Kelly was gone. The circle had closed in the cruelest way. Diana, Helen, and now Kelly, all lost to breast cancer. 3 pillars, same relentless enemy. Her clothes still hung in the closet. Her perfume lingered like a ghost. At dinner, her chair stayed empty. At night, his hand reached across the bed and found only cool sheets. Even the piano refused to sing. He withdrew to protect his kids, to learn how to breathe again. "Grief is personal," he wrote. "My journey of healing is finding my own path." Not lines for press. Words of a widower discovering life after the center disappears. He didn't surrender. Every careful smile, every photo with his children, every quiet flight he piloted alone through cloud and sun, it wasn't denial, it was defiance. Love had given him everything and taken everything. He kept walking anyway. Before he could heal, another blow. September 2020, barely 2 months after Kelly's passing, his younger half-brother, Sam Travolta Jr., died suddenly at 52. 2 funerals within weeks. The flowers from one hadn't faded before condolences for another arrived. How much more can one soul endure? A friend heard him whisper. The storm didn't relent. August 2022, the world lost Olivia Newton-John, Sandy to his Danny, a dear friend for 40 years. Breast cancer claimed her after decades of battle. His tribute cut to the bone. "My dearest Olivia, I love you so much. We will see you down the road, and we will all be together again." Months later, December 2022, Kirstie Alley, his Look Who's Talking co-star and friend of over 3 decades, was gone too. Kirstie was one of the most special relationships I've ever had. Cancer again. By the end of 2022, John Travolta was living among ghosts. In just 3 years. A wife, a brother, 2 cherished friends, and, looking further back, Diana and Helen, 5 women taken by the same disease. 7 loved ones gone if you include Jed and Sam. The laughter that once filled his sets and home lingers now as echo, and still he did not collapse. He turned his strength toward Ella and Benjamin. Bedtime stories, family dinners, small smiles. To some he looked fragile. Underneath, a tempered steel.